Are we are we live?
We're live now.
Oh man, we figured that out. Sorry, everyone that has been trying to join us. We had a little bit of a technical issue with Restream. You know, for two guys in tech, you would think we'd be able to figure these things out rather quick, but Andy jumped into it and figured it out. And we're here. We're here. We're excited to be with you. It is a Tuesday. January 23rd. I had to look at my calendar to make sure it was the actual day. But Andy, what's up, man? Good to see you.
Yeah, calling in from the snowy Catskills of upstate New York today, thanks to a snow day at school. So not in the office for this one. Different background, changing it up.
Hey, changing it up's always a good thing. Yeah, I mean, my nanny called out as well today. She had an anxiety attack, which is no joke. So I was like, stay home for sure. I can
Yeah.
tackle it. And hey, we just make those things work. So good to do, good all around. So for everyone joining us, if you missed the last episode, we did an AMA and we actually had a ton of questions. And so we were like, why not do a part two? And we actually have even more questions. But if you do have any questions, please throw them in the chat. We'll try to tackle those ones live as well because you're spending your time with us. But because we only have 30 minutes today, I figure we might as well jump into some of these. So let's see. I'm going through the list here. So this one actually kind of is interesting because it covers both like what you guys are passionate about as well as like what I've done before. And so the question is, how can you pair an influencer strategy with paid media? And I'll throw it over to you there because I've been on both sides of this. I've been working for a brand that I've worked with influencers and creators, and I've leveraged paid media. And I've, as a creator, worked with brands where they leverage paid media to promote something that I talked about. So I'll throw it over to you first, and then I'll jump in kind of with some of my thoughts.
I mean, it comes back to who's the influencer and how authentic is the message, I think, at the end of the
Mm,
day. I mean, if you're doing your due diligence, which, we'll flip back to you in a second, is like, okay, are they aligned with our ICP? Do they have a
mhm.
following that is truly our audience? And then, like, what is the message and authenticity behind that message? Because you don't want to have somebody saying something that's just words but means nothing, and really, you know, something that you don't stand behind or something that you do. But to translate that then into paid media, I mean, thought leader ads on LinkedIn are a great example of how these two silos historically are merged together, where you're able to promote somebody else's posts as long as they're an employee, right? And things like that. I mean, Meta did it for a long time. I mean, I'm not as well versed with that side of things anymore, but you would have sponsored posts that you could actually put live, and it would just say, Kim Kardashian in sponsorship with XYZ. We had a term life client that actually did that for a while. We weren't involved in that campaign, but it is kind of a long time coming. I think TikTok obviously is something very similar to that, where they don't necessarily have the paid media platform yet to support it, but it's coming soon. The question is always comes back to authenticity and message, in my opinion, though.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Now, I think the tricky thing with thought leader ads is because you mentioned you have to put that you work at that company or whatever. So sometimes the tricky piece is if you want to leverage thought media ads with an influencer as part of your strategy, like not everyone's willing to like put that they're
Mhm.
associated with your company. And maybe if you write that into the commercials or whatever, that's cool. I do think thought leader ads can be really, really beneficial. I've seen it be really good. And I've actually done this recently with Devin Reed for one of our other clients. And so we've leveraged him to promote a webinar that we were doing for, it was the two founders kind of doing a thing around repurposing content. And we did kind of a LinkedIn post, newsletter combo, and then we put a little bit of paid behind it. But we were able to get over 300 registrations of the exact ICP from that. Now, I mean, granted, listen, everything comes with a cost. It was not as cheap as I would like, but like it the amount of people that showed up live and then the amount that turned into demo requests, yeah, as long as one of those closed, it'll pay for itself. So
Let's talk about this tactically for a second too, because
yeah,
I think what's important here is the follower base of the influencer actually doesn't matter that much. It's
mm,
more so, is the influencer well known in the audience that you're going to be targeting within the paid media campaigns? Like, for example, I mean, we'll just use us for as
yeah,
an example here, right? I mean, Nick, you're well known on LinkedIn, you're well known in the creator economy, But for our size of clients, typically are like mid-market, enterprise level. To be frank, most of them, they have no idea who you are. And to put thought leader ads behind something that you might
Right.
put out there on behalf of us, it probably is going to do squat because nobody knows you and the message that you might deliver on behalf of us. So it is understanding like the follower base
Yep.
of the individual, but also really more importantly, is that individual influencer known within the space that you're going to be targeting?
Yeah, and especially, I mean, I've wondered this too, like especially as you get into like enterprise companies, and maybe it's because my background, I've worked in more of like smaller like startups or maybe even
Mhm.
mid-market, but like I agree. And I think what I've talked about has also changed over the time as well. But yeah, I mean, I don't if people hype up follower count. I don't think follower counts matters. It's like, hey, is this person like well known within my
Yeah.
ICP? Cool. All right, let's figure out something to do. And hopefully it's beyond just like a collaboration through like sponsored posts. You could do a
Yeah.
lot more through that.
Yep.
So definitely with you there. Let's talk about let me see one of these other things. Um what role does a sales team have in building a people first strategy? How do you find harmony between sales and marketing team, especially if the sales team is hyper focused on leads? Um so I can jump in there first
Yeah.
and you can kind of weigh in. But so again, I came up as a field marketer. I did field marketing, I did ABM. So like for me, sales was always my internal customer. And so a lot that I did in before I even like knew people first, or like it was always something I was doing, but I was regularly communicating. Like I was in sales before I was in marketing. So I walked a very fine line between sales and marketing. It was like, hey, I'm not just some corporate marketer that's going to jam stuff down your throat. What can I do to build relationships? That was like the first thing. All right, cool. For the first 60 days of any role, I was going to build relationships with the sales team. And the reason being was that's going to have the sales team start to have trust in me as a marketer, but also as the team as a whole. And I can then start to be like, all right, great. Let's change our mindset of how we approach our go to market strategy. It's not just lead focus. We can very much say, all right, let's focus on the accounts. And maybe it's territory based, maybe segment, maybe vertical, whatever it is. But those first 60 days and the ability to take those 60 days and then have weekly meetings with sales leaders, with the actual sales reps, with even SDRs or BDRs. Um, it was very, very helpful in creating that sales and marketing alignment, and shifted from like that old like, hey, marketer, go just do this for me, you're like my event planner, to like, hey, you're actually an incredible tool to my arsenal, and I want to figure out how to take this strategy and go to the next level with you. And when someone says, all right, listen, I want to do this with you versus I'm going to go do this myself, that's when you start to notice there's a big shift there. And that's when you start to be like, all right, I think I'm starting to win this battle.
So I think you touched on something very important there is relationships. And you
Mm,
talked about it from the perspective of sales and marketing. Sales is relationship driven. That is actually how you drive a sale. You need to build a relationship. You need to sell not just what you're selling, but you need to sell yourself and the trust and everything that it brings with you. So I think relationships are across this entire thing of alignment,
mm,
which when we think about like a people first strategy, trust is at the core of everything there. It's
yeah.
understanding and building that trust that drives that relationship forward. Now, the other thing that's people first focused is let's think about how we're going to actually go to market. Well, we need to understand who those audiences are, what they care about, what their challenges, their passions, their problems are. Guess who one of the gatekeepers is to all of that information?
Mhm.
Sales. Sales calls, the actual customers. If you don't have a customer success team, but everything is handled by like an AE, um, they are your champions internally, but they are also your champions to understanding who your customers are and really developing those audiences that marketing needs to go to market with. And then ultimately align the messaging, the marketing materials, and the enablement materials so that way you have a cohesive message and you're not disjointed in, hey, marketing is saying this and promising XYZ, and sales is coming in and discounting everything we're doing, removing all the value, or vice versa. And I think it all goes back to that trust piece of things that has to happen across the board.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think, I feel like there's a lot of marketers out there that don't look at sales as like a trusted partner
Yeah.
throughout this whole thing. And I think that's part of the issue. But I feel like it needs to start from like CMO, CRO, or whatever that is, VP of marketing, VP of
Yeah.
sales. Like it has to start from the top in whatever angle and then push it down from there.
So, shameless plug for our other show that I do with James Kravick from Dragon 360 called Digital Banter. If you guys check out the episode that we just released with Scott Logan, we talk a lot about this, where he basically says, look, to my team, him speaking to his marketing team, like 50% of your time needs to be spent with sales because you're creating alignment across the board. You're creating collaboration and you are creating the insights that are going to drive that go-to-market machine.
Yeah. It's funny. Followed him for a while and met him at a conference. I think it was like a year or so ago, or maybe 2 years ago. But he put out this like funny like content series after that, and like I was like, oh, this is actually really really good, and it's something I actually listened to that episode. So I maybe I subconsciously put that in because of that, but we'll see. So no, I agree with that. Relationships mean everything. I want to talk about something, and this one came in, and maybe it's because I was a customer marketer for a short period of time. But um, oh, don't forget your marketing research partners. Yep, that's a huge piece, Nick. I actually, it's funny going back to that. Maybe it's because I've worked for like smaller companies, but we've never really had like marketing research partners. We've had people that have kind of like focused on a little bit, but like it was never like a bigger piece that you see in bigger companies.
Yeah, same here.
Cool. All right, let's talk about this question came in. Someone DM'd me it, and it was, what are some effective ways to measure the success of customer marketing efforts? Now, I don't have to
I
tell
mean, are
any.
you losing clients? Like,
Well, I think the issue is too, it's like, I mean, listen, we know the economy shit right now. Like it's
hey,
it
Dow just hit like a record high, man. Maybe we shouldn't be saying the economy shit anymore here.
well, it's funny because I go out, like I was at a funeral recently and we went out to lunch, and the amount of people that were at this restaurant at midday on a Monday blew my mind. And again, it was a lot of like baby boomers, so like
Mhm.
they probably have nothing else to do, and like they probably have all this money saved. But like this has happened now like 4 times in the last couple of months where I go out for lunch on like a Monday or Tuesday in like a decent, like nice restaurant, and it is just absolutely packed. So as much as people say the economy is crap, some people would disagree with that. But like when I think about like the ways to measure customer success, customer marketing efforts, and again, I did customer marketing while I was at Alice for a short time. And the biggest thing that I looked at was time to value. So one of the things that we had was Alice was a B2B gifting platform. They signed 12-month contracts. Their goal was to see time to value in less than 90 days. Because when I came in there, and again, I was there for a while, so I was doing other roles. But when I moved over to that side of it, I actually reported to our VP of customer success. Great alignment there. It actually was interesting because I wasn't part of the marketing team. But their time to value was 90 days. So if you think about that, you were
Hey,
seeing.
break that down for me. Like, how do you measure time to value?
So yeah, so there's actually a few things. So the amount you like, it was based on the number of gifts that you sent. So
Okay.
I think the gifts, it was like you had to send like 20 gifts or something, and that was one pillar of it. Then you had to have a certain amount accepted of those gifts to the people that you sent them to. It was all about engaging the platforms that you actually knew how to use it. Did you connect your CRM? Did you connect your marketing automation platform so you could see all the different integrations that you had, so you seamlessly never had to leave the platform and go and do other things?
So in essence, it's the time in which you are actually getting value out of your purchase.
Exactly.
It's like the 3 plate minimum at Old Country buffet, right? Okay.
That's I used to go. I had one of those maybe when I grew up. It was like 10 minutes for me. I used to always go to that place, and it was, yeah. It's been a long time. I don't even think they're around anymore.
No, I sidetracked you. Sorry.
But yeah, so it was like 90 days. And if you think about that, so 90 days to see value of the tool that you purchased. And listen, we weren't cheap at the time. I think we were charging like 25 to $30,000, which some people might be, it's no biggie. But for a gifting platform, it's a nice to have. It's not a must have. And so you're basically 3 months into a 12-month contract of starting to get your feet wet. Not even like you're a pro at this point. Then it's like, all right, you're starting to have those basically, conversations about renewals. 2 months or so before. So it's like you have a short period of window to be able to say, like, is this platform actually delivering an ROI for me? And so I said, all right, listen, we need to get that time to value to under 30 days. If you can hit it sub 30 days, then what's going to happen is within that first month, people are going to start to see value. And then you have another 10 months or so where they can really maximize what they see. So hopefully that renewal comes in, there's upsell opportunities, all of those things. And they didn't really do much customer marketing efforts while I was there. I was literally the first person that kind of did that. And the first thing that I did was, and I hate to kind of even like say this, but like they actually didn't email customers, or users. They emailed administrators of the platform, but they didn't email the users. And so I just kind of went and I set up a weekly like tips and tricks type thing. And the amount of people that didn't know about integrations we had, like, and I'm talking about like Salesforce, HubSpot, like simple stuff. Like they were like, wow, this stuff exists. And I'm like, well, one, your CSM should have been telling you that, but they didn't. Um, and we saw, so I was, by the time I left, we were at 35 days for time to value. So it went from 90 days to 35 days. And we only implemented like 2 or 3 different programs. It was a weekly email that came from our VP of CS that I wrote for her. It was regular meetups with other customers through different types of like VIP style events. And then it was more of like letting people know that we actually had a kind of like a database of like, hey, you can search these questions. Again, we buried it in our website, so like no one knew about it. And so many people were like, wow, this is helpful, because I got all the reply emails and I could see specifically what people were asking, like how much appreciative they were. But that was the biggest thing that I looked at that ultimately impacted net revenue retention from that, which is interesting because some people will be like, well, what else do you look at? Like, do you look at NPS scores? Yeah, I mean, we looked at NPS scores, of course, but like, I feel like for a SaaS platform, um, time to value was one of the biggest things that can actually make a huge impact for your users.
In general, it kind of baffles me that so many brands don't use customer marketing in a much greater fashion than what they do. Like,
Mm,
to give you an example there, right? I mean, there's so many ripe opportunities. If you sell multiple products or ancillary products, I mean, the cross sells, upsells, everything that goes with that. And when you think about how people go about doing that, it's like, oh yeah, they're going to hop on the weekly or quarterly call with their CS and maybe that person will plug it. Or no, we send emails. Like, who, no, you get enough inbox emails as is, and not enough brands take advantage of. You own, I shouldn't say you own, you have this first party data that you can use in so many different ways. I mean, us as a performance marketing agency, we're always asking for that because of all the opportunities it brings. I mean, you're talking about cheaper acquisition costs. You're talking about people that are directly in market. You don't have to sell them on the brand as long as you build trust. You just need to sell them on the features and opportunities that these other products or services bring to the table. I mean, it's kind of like a mini ABM effort in so many regards, except
mhm.
you're not going after cold prospects that have never heard of you. You're working with existing customers and you're just tagging on to everything that's being said by their account reps and everything else.
Yep.
Again, it amazes me that not enough brands use that as a quick win opportunity or even part of the strategy.
Exactly. And then when you think about like going into enterprise and how many different buying units there are, like you could leverage your existing, like, say you're in 1 or 2 different like units there. Like, why
Mhm.
aren't you leveraging them in those relationships, which going
Right.
back to relationships, like going into the other things.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
cool. Let's see. There's one here that actually could be good for you to kick things off. So like what role does data play in understanding and connecting with your B2B audience, especially when it comes to putting people first?
Everything.
Yeah.
I mean, we just talked about customers. I mean, understanding who your customers are, all the data that that provides, and all of the data points that it is an output of that
Mm,
allows you to create audiences from. I mean, audience segmentation and development is the core piece to our process because it
mhm,
is people first. It's understanding who our ICP is, validating that it is actually the ICP, and then understanding who those decision makers are, the champions, and all of the pains, passions, challenges, and problems that come with that. I mean, using tools from Sales Navigator to Spark
mm,
Toro, all of those data points craft an identity and a picture of who your actual customer is and what they're struggling with either today because they're in market or tomorrow because they haven't realized they have a problem yet. I mean, that it's a broad question, but like data is everything to getting off the ground and then ultimately understanding if it's working or not.
Yeah, and it's like it's honestly it's a great way to figure out how to like leverage that data to be able to personalize. So it's not like, not spray and pray on LinkedIn. Like, we've all gotten
Yeah.
those like DMs where it's like, "Hey, saw you like Justin Welsh's post. I'm just gonna segment you
Yeah.
basically like, for liking something." Like I can't tell you like I got one really good pitch from a salesperson years ago, and like it was so personalized, like took specific like LinkedIn posts that I wrote, took some stuff from my profile, stuff from people that like knew me that somehow they
Mhm.
had information from, and they leveraged that plus their internal like first party data to basically craft this incredible email. And usually I just hit delete on these things. But with this, the guy was so people first without me even knowing it that I ended up signing a $30,000 contract with them 2 weeks later. I was working for an IT company at the time, and they were kinda like a G2 for IT, and, they exactly the audience that we wanted to plug into and, like, helped me, like, realize I had a problem without even, like, knowing I had a problem, but, like, it felt like someone that knew me for so long, and, I still talk to him to this day, and I tell this story to him that, like, I tell people. So, if he's listening, I'm sure he'll find that funny, but, 4
I
years
mean,
later.
the other thing too that you have to be careful with is like misleading data because let's use
Mm,
a great example here. Just because our audience is on LinkedIn and
yep,
our audience is 40,000 strong based off of the parameters that we have mapped out,
yep,
it doesn't mean that they actually hang out enough on LinkedIn to make a difference. That's where you go to like Sales Navigator or something else and see the
yeah,
activity that those members had in the last 30 to 90 days. Because if it's only 5% of your audience is hanging out enough, then LinkedIn's probably not a channel that should be like one of the primary channels within your marketing mix.
yeah,
So
it's a good.
that's the big thing is like you have to take data with a grain of salt, but also look at various aspects of it that merge together to create that picture.
Yeah, well, here's one for you that kind of plays off of that. Like, if you don't pay for Sales Nav, because like for example, I don't use Sales Nav. I've used it in the past. I see the value in it, but like I just can't afford it now. Um, but like, how could you leverage data in like figuring that out like today? Like, as someone that say maybe you're not using Sales Nav, what would you do?
Uh, I mean, at scale, it's kind of difficult. There's other
Mm,
tools that exist, but at
yeah,
scale is the challenge there, especially because like LinkedIn holds so much data
yeah,
in house and doesn't let it get exported legally. There's plenty of tools that you can get it from, but whether or not you get banned after the fact is questionable.
that's
Um, I mean, it does come down to that. I mean, you can add in layers within Campaign Manager around activity and things like that, but I don't. You have to go through the process to figure it out at the end of the day. I
mm.
don't think there's a foolproof answer to that.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I want to talk about one that's around like the creator economy that like is that a little bit interesting. So this came in from a very large company, but the question is, how is the creator economy changing the way brands market themselves, and what should we know about it? Now, and I'm curious your take here because I can tell you it's an enterprise company, and I think a lot of these enterprise companies are so kind of like old school mindset that I think they're still trying to catch up. So I'm curious, like, what would you say there?
It goes back to the influencer question, I think,
Mm,
right? Because if you are I mean, if you're tapping into influencers, they've already become a creator. Now,
yeah,
if you're looking to build a creator internally, the question is, does that person have the ability to do such and are they willing to do such? I mean, there's plenty of evangelists that have existed out there,
right.
and I think that's like the closest thing from an enterprise perspective that you could probably relate back to like the creator economy is evangelism and evangelists that you've created internally. um Now the question is like, okay, how does that trickle down into creating more opportunities of creatorship? I mean, I'm making up that word right now, but um it goes back also like the thing that comes to mind right now is like you go back maybe like what 6 7 years, like employee advocacy and all of those tools that came out, like Gagalamp is a great one that I remember just off the
Yeah,
top of my head. Like
yeah,
this thing has existed for a while, it's just picked up steam and in a different way than what it was back then. So I think as an enterprise level, I mean, you need to know that there is a comparison to things that you're probably familiar with.
Mm.
The other thing that I feel is a hurdle that an enterprise brand needs to overcome is you can't slap handcuffs on anybody. Like for true authentic creatorship, they need to be able to create willingly and openly and talk aligned with your message. Don't get me wrong, but like you can't have them go through 50 layers of compliance to wean down some message into something that means nothing to their audience or the audience that they're looking to build at the end of the day. But once you have a creator that has built up that audience and following, then you can flip it easily into an opportunity. Now, the thing also I think that comes into mind now as I'm like talking off the top of my head is like, you better be prepared for a compensation conversation to happen. Because if you've got somebody that's invested and they are building an audience on your behalf, and now you're going to tap into it or thinking you're going to tap into it, you better expect to pay a commission or some kind of comp that kind of is above and beyond the salary that you've already given them.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I think that like I remember like just people talking about like employee advocacy, and like I mean I was an evangelist and like kind of like when I was at Alice and even Air Meet and like did like I was posting stuff and like there was inbounds that were coming from it and like cool like that makes sense, but like it was no one was ever willing to pay like that commission or like that extra money and it's so weird to me. It was like it was a win-win, like you're benefiting as like a company, but like why can't you like give a little bit of a kickback or something for like the deals that are coming in? Like ultimately that person is just going to end up probably leaving and going and doing something else because they feel undervalued or something. um
Do you
but
feel it
yeah,
came
no.
back to like attribution at the end of the day?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, I mean, maybe it's like through self-reported attribution, but like I don't even know. I can tell you exactly the number of self-reported attribution demo requests that like I drove because I still remember this number and I wrote about it recently. But like over a 2 year span between LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter at the time, it was I wrote about it like a couple weeks ago, but I think it was 89. I think that was like the total number, which resulted in $1.2 million actually closing from it. Now, you want to know how much extra I got from it? Absolutely zero. Um,
Pat on the back.
now,
I bet you got a pat on the back, right?
yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not asking for like $1 million or anything. Like, if you gave me an extra like 30 grand, I probably would have been happy. But
But Nick, you only helped drive the lead. You didn't close it.
that's
That's the argument that I can hear somebody saying like, okay, thanks Nick for the referral, but I did all the work to close it.
That's true, but the thing is because they were selling to marketers, I was on a majority of those sales calls. So in fact, I was playing a bigger piece than the
All
average
right.
salesperson because sometimes like they couldn't talk the lingo. Or, like we had a lot of new sales reps that like weren't as like, and again, this is where the alignment and like relationship building, like they trusted me to help close sales for them. And I got nothing in return, but I did it as just like, hey, I'm a kind person. This is
Yeah.
what I want to do. So
Right.
cool. Do we have time for one more? What do you want to do?
Go for one more.
All right, cool. Let's talk about how do you gather feedback from B2B customers? This one's interesting. And how has this feedback influenced adjustments or refinements in your marketing approach? Um,
We do it on the agency side by getting stakeholder and customer interviews at the very early stages of our
uh,
campaign development and planning process. Like
how?
asking
Oh, just that. Oh, okay.
asking the client, hey, we'd love to have 3 customer interviews.
Hmm.
Can you set those up? Like things like that. And typically, there's some back and forth there,
Yeah.
but also wrapping in, sales interviews. Like we don't just stick with the marketing department. Like we definitely like break out of any silos and don't stay within our lane in this process. Like customer success conversations, sales conversations, up to leadership, because what that really unveils is like what are the true value propositions and differentiated values that are making a difference. Because guess what, nobody's going to come out and say, yeah, it saved me time and money, because that's not the problem they were looking to solve. But yet so many brands put that out there as their go-to message when it comes to anything. um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it is about getting those interviews. It's also, I mean, you can use different things, surveys,
Hmm.
things like that. I mean, if you have a really well-rounded customer focused brand that you're working with, like speaking as an agency here, you're going to have G2 reviews, you're going to have reviews that exist out there, you're probably going to have customer testimonial videos that should be authentic and not like scripted down to the word. So there's other pieces of feedback that you're going to be able to get a sentiment analysis around when it comes to brand. And then you translate that into, okay, instead of saving time and money or, making your AP processes more streamlined, like, no, we're going to help you go home and sleep better at night. Or, hey, we're going to, that insurance broker that has got you covered today, guess what? Do they have you covered for XYZ that actually is applicable to, the horse farm that you own or anywhere else? It's those people first situations and understand like what is somebody actually going to be tasked with or faced with that you're going to help with that drives all of that forward.
Yeah, I like that a lot, actually. I think that's an important thing that like people sometimes don't think about is like I've actually always leveraged like I've leveraged surveys a good amount, especially when it's like from like customers. Like say you're doing like a user conference, for example. That's another like big piece where like I've leveraged like kind of like NPS scores for customers. But um I've spoke to a lot of customers. I've never like I feel like I never asked for it up front, always, and maybe that's something that I need to change. Maybe that's something that I actually like that a lot.
Don't get me wrong, we get turned down plenty of times, but like, hey, if you don't ask, you never have a chance.
That's true too. Let's see. Nick said, "Yeah, I like it. Now you're talking my language of marketing research." How about conversations with not just customers but also prospective customers?
Uh Same kind of mindset, in my
Mhm.
opinion, is
Yeah.
like, you know, let's say you've got somebody in pipe or early stages of pipe. I mean, just having that conversation, starting to gain those insights. Or, I mean, to his point that he's kind of alluded to, or when you're talking about like market research, like going out in the field and just informally talking to people that are within your ICP and your market. What are some of the things that you're faced with? What are some of the things that, you're really challenged with? What are things you passionate about to understand like what their day-to-day lives really roll up to? And then if you can extrapolate that and scale it into an actual audience, I mean, it's kind of what goes into persona development
Mm.
when you think about it. It's not just marketing Mary and everything else. Like it's the actual subsurface insights that should be powering those through.
Love that. No, big believer of that as well. Cool. Well, I think that's everything. So I think there's more questions that obviously we could have got to. Maybe we'll do a part three. Maybe we won't. But what we're so question for you is when can people tune in? So it looks like we're kind of dropping these and we're changing them to doing them bi-weekly. So the next
Mhm.
one is slated for February 6th. Anything you want to add there?
Is that Super Bowl week?
It is Super Bowl week.
No, Eagles are
49ers are
out, so it
gonna
doesn't
40
matter.
49ers are gonna be winning it.
Yeah, the script says it, right?
My
I
bank
mean, we
account
might be
will.
coming back with another AMA. It depends on what the follow-ups are again. I think
Yeah.
we're going to keep it open-ended as far as where we take the direction of this. But, going back to some of the stuff that we've talked about up to this point, leading into last episode and this one, it's about how do we scale value, right?
Mhm.
Rather than just kind of giving value at an individual campaign or brand level. Like we want to be able to scale value in this show. And I think that's kind of the direction that we're going to continue to tweak
Yep.
and figure out the best way to do that. A couple more of these, couple more of others, things like that.
Yeah, Michael, Patriots had a rough year, so I'm rooting. Although I would like to see
Lions, baby.
Detroit.
Got to go with the Lions.
Yeah, I
Got to
would
see the
like to see
Lions.
Detroit. It's so many Patriots went there. I would like to see. It's been a while for Detroit. I would like to see them beat the Niners. I don't think that's going to happen, but I still think it's going to be Ravens and Niners with the Niners coming out on top. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. But again, thank you all for tuning in. If you have questions or you want, like, if you could send us some feedback, is this helpful for you? Like, do you find it valuable? Um, I talk to people and they tell me one off, but like I don't hear from a ton of people, so I have no clue. Same with Andy. I'm sure he'd love the feedback. So if you could give us some feedback, we definitely appreciate that. And then yeah, that's pretty much it. We'll catch you at the next episode. reach out to us on LinkedIn. We're always approachable, not going to bite your head off, hopefully answer your questions and deliver more value.
Catch you guys next time.